Good morning once again. So let's start with our focus statement this morning, shall we? Let's say it all together with all the V's: vim, velocity, vivaciousness, vigor, and every other V possible. All right, here we go. We embolden people to live their highest potential through the transformative power of love. Yes, we do. So this morning, or this whole year, we have been exploring the theme of spirituality in action. And the theme for this month is protect the vulnerable and empathy. And the talk title today was about creating meaningful conversations. And so what I would like to share with you this morning is that what is going to unfold here this day is a celebration. It is an honoring of our collective history, and it is a celebration of our collective freedom. And it is an opportunity to begin to engage in meaningful conversations. So I invite you to come to this celebration this morning with an open heart, an open mind, and a willingness to listen deep, deep, deep within your soul. This morning, we are blessed to have one of our very own beloveds speaking the word, speaking her word, and speaking truth. And it is an honor to welcome her to sing and share message, and then sing again and celebrate. So please welcome Yvette Brandy to the stage. Yvette is our choir director for our Voices of Light choir. She is a professional storyteller. She is deeply steeped in our tradition of science of mind and religious science here that we practice here at Centers for Spiritual Living. And she has much, much, much to offer, much, much, much to give. So I invite you to please stand and welcome this beloved Yvette Brandy. And I invite you to remain standing. As she leads us in Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. God of our wearies, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on our we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places of God where we met the old. Lest our hearts drunk with the wine of the world we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand true to our God, true to our native land, true to our God, true to our native land. Good morning. Have a seat. Sit down. Good morning. It is such a pleasure to be here. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers and father figures and godfathers and grandfathers. And welcome to all of our new members. We welcome you with love. And so we're celebrating Juneteenth today, too. How many of you, by raise of hand, know what Juneteenth is? Fantastic. And how many of you have celebrated it before? Great. And as you know, with every creation, there's a beginning. So we'll start there. And so the first wave of Africans to enter the shores of Americas was about 1300 BC. Take that in now. BC. And then the second wave would come around 1300 AD. And then, as you know, then another wave would come. Now, remember this morning when you woke up and you brushed your teeth and you got dressed and you came here, and imagine on your way here someone were to snatch you and pull you away from all that you know and lock you in chains, and then put you in chains with somebody else, and then march you from your house from here to the Pacific Ocean. This morning, what if that happened this morning? That was the morning for many of Africans, and some didn't make that trip. But let's say you did, and you got to the shores, and where you were branded and stored for shipment, just like any goods that we have today. And then you were placed in the belly of a ship, so close to each other, without air, with little food, and maybe the person next to you died. And you would lie there with them, and you're in your excrement, and you're in your sweat, and you're in your tears, and people next to you may not be able to understand a word you say. And you wait for the door above you to open so you can walk up those stairs and maybe get a breath of fresh air, and where you would see some of the people who were at the bottom of the ship with you thrown overboard because maybe they were diseased, or maybe because they wouldn't comply, or maybe because they decided, I'm not going further than this. And you would get to the shores of this new place that's so not like anything you've ever seen. And then you would be slathered down with oil and gunpowder so you can look shiny for sale. And people will come and open your mouth and search you to see just how much they think they should bid for you. And they're speaking in a language you don't understand. And they don't understand you. And you don't know where your mother is, where your father is, where your wife, where your husband, where your children are. And that's your beginning day on the shores of America. And so, as you were there, you're looking out and you're praying with the prayers that you know how to say, and hoping that all will possibly go well. But they don't. You are sold to this new country in the making, to these colonies that say, you know what? We need to build a country, and you'll be the one to do it, and you become cash crop. The entire economy will depend on your work. What do? We here at Riverside, we say love, live here, don't we? Could you still say that in the middle of that? Could you still say, I think love lives here? But they had to, because if they didn't, we wouldn't be here. And so we all know the story. We know the work. You wake up in the morning, you work all day. We all know the treatment. We all know what happened to women. We all know what happened to the children. We all know what happened to the men. They were all violated and brutally so, and every time they ran, they'd come back and something may be severed because they ran. Or they ran and they were caught. They ran and they were caught, but some ran and got away, which gave hope to the other ones. Maybe I can get away too. By this point now, the 13 colonies are like, we don't need Britain. We don't need England. We're going to start our own country, and it's going to be based on freedom. And the Patriots said, we won't be slaves anymore. Isn't that funny? We won't be slaves to England anymore. We won't be slaves to a king anymore. We want to do what we want to do. And so the enslaved Africans were like, that sounds good to me. I think we should do that. And so the Revolutionary War would begin, and you would have enslaved Africans fighting on the side of the Patriots saying, yeah, no slavery for you, no slavery for me, life will be good. But then Britain was like, hey, if you fight with us, we will free you. And so you also had enslaved Africans fighting on that side. And so you have enslaved Africans fighting for the right, for what the Patriots say should be so. And the Patriots won. And you're like, yes, freedom for all of us. And they were like, well, you know, we kind of need the labor, because if we don't have you, then we don't have an economy. And if we don't have an economy, we don't have a country. So maybe later. But Mom Bet said, no, I want it now. And she sued. Can you imagine? She sued. Little lady, you know, the people where you're not allowed to read, you're not allowed to write, but she found herself a lawyer and she sued. And she won. She won. Yes, give it a clap for her. And that would be the beginning of things to come, because within a couple of decades, northern states would start abolishing slavery in their state. So it was the beginning. And so again, you still have the same system, but things are moving. And when you're in the middle of it, it probably seems like it's moving so slowly, but it's moving all the same. So things are moving. And now enslaved Africans are saying, no, this isn't working for me. And slave owners are saying, but it's working for us. And so you have this back and forth, and then we start running away and getting away. And the same people who Jefferson said, you know, it's really okay for them to be slaves because they're not that bright. It's okay for them to be slaves because they can't think like we can. It's all right. Those same people, where it was against the law to learn to read and write, figured out a system to communicate. Now remember, there's no telephone, no internet, no iPads. Still, they figured out how to communicate and create the Underground Railroad. And it's amazing to me, because think about it. You've got, how am I going to let them know it's time? How am I going to let you know it's your time? Are you ready? Well, you put the quilt up. And each square has direction based on the design of it. And so it will tell you, you go tonight. You get all your things. It's almost time. You make sure you go by the water and follow the drinking gourd. Follow the drinking gourd. For the old man here come to carry you to freedom. What does that mean? Look up, Big Dipper. Find that North Star. And to lose the scent of the dog, what should you do? Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. And all of this was happening in plain sight. And so now it was your turn. You gather your things, and you're gone. From station to station to station. And still, rebellions were happening, and there was squelch. Masters were sometimes poisoned. That happens. Plantations were being burned. At every step, there was this resistance. This, I know that love lives here, and I want it. This, I know that I'm supposed to be free, and I was born to have it. And so it was this struggle of every time Harriet Tubman would get somebody over that line or someone else, there would be a new law that says, we're not having that. And it'll be even more brutal. There was a woman, her name was Harriet Jacobs. Have you heard of her? Harriet Jacobs had a couple of children, and her master would not let her go. Her grandmother earned enough to buy her freedom, and he wouldn't let her. Her lover found enough, and he wouldn't let her. And he said, if you run, if you leave, I won't sell you, because if you don't do what I say, I'm going to take your children and send them to the worst plantation that I have. What would you do? Her two little children. Do you know what she did? She ran anyway. And by then, he had no power over her. And so he sold her children. And luckily, the man who bought her children, which happened to be the father of them, gave them to her grandmother to raise. Do you know where Harriet was? Locked in her grandmother's attic. She stayed there for 7 years, watching her children through a little hole. They never knew she was that close, just so that she wouldn't be away from them. And no one thought to look there. Who would? 7 years. Could you do that? Could you be locked in someone's attic for 7 years and through a little hole watch your children and say nothing? So she wrote. And we have her narratives today. So all of this was happening, and it's leading up to you know what? It's leading up to you know what? Because you can't continue this for so long. And then we started to get more states. The country is growing. And we're like, okay, we'll balance it. We'll have an equal number of free states and an equal number of slave states, so it'll be balanced. But then we had cotton. Cotton's king. Cotton makes a lot of money. Now we've got these new states. And so that middle passage that those enslaved Africans survived for months at a time, now it's time to do it again. Now it's time to march towards the deep south with those new states to grow cotton. Well, there was a man, his name was Robert Smalls, and he lived in South Carolina. And he was very smart and very talented. And one of the things that you can count on when you had enslaved people, you can borrow money against them. You're worth about, $600, and I can go to the bank and say, I need $600, and they would say, okay, if you don't pay it back, we'll take him. So you could do it that way. And you are so good with building things. What you will do, you build for me, and then you'll build for Mr. So-and-so, and build for so-and-so, and every cent they give you, they give it to me. And that's what happened with Robert Smalls. And so he was good with his hands. And so he was hired out, and he could earn $15 a day. He'd come back, give that to the slave owner, and the slave owner will give him $1. Isn't that nice? And he would take that $1, save it, buy little things, and sell it. Eventually, he convinced his slave owner, I'm making more money for you outside of the plantation. Why don't you let me stay here in Charleston? And I can make you more money. Every time, I will send you $15 for every job I send. Sounds like a good deal, doesn't it? Slave owner said, okay, we'll do that. He married, got himself a house in Charleston, and he was billing out his time. He got onto the ships even, learned how to work on ships. Well, you know what's coming. The Civil War is coming. He is now working on a Confederate ship, an ammunition ship, right? And so he's making a lot of money for his slave owners, so no complaints, no need to do anything different. So now, Civil War has begun, and we're in Charleston, so we're in the hub of all the stuff that's happening. What do you think Mr. Robert Smalls should do? What would you do? You're right there in the middle of all of it. He got together all of his other enslaved Africans who were working in that ship and said, why don't we steal the ship? Isn't that the first thing that came to your mind? And you must know that when words came out of his mouth, they were like, are you crazy? You want us to do what? Not only do you want us to steal it in the middle of all the battle, you want us to steal the ship. He goes, yeah. And one of the guys were like, I'm out. No, not me. Because if we get caught, what they would do to my family, I ain't doing that. And so he planned it. And they had just loaded the ship up with all the ammunitions. And the rule was the white sailors would go home to sleep, and the enslaved Africans would, stay on the ship that night. He eased that boat out of that harbor, picked up the families of the enslaved Africans, and they started sailing. Now, there were checkpoints. And so every time there was a checkpoint, he knew what to do. Hey, you do the sign, you do the horn, you got the code. He did the code. There was 1 checkpoint, 2 checkpoints, 3 checkpoints. He's coming through, he's coming through, he's coming through. And then it was like, we're trying to get to the Union, and they don't know we're coming. What do you think the Union would do if they saw a Confederate ship coming towards them? So I was like, well, and his wife said, put that white bed sheet up there, take that flag down, put that white bed sheet up there. And they sailed right on through. And they delivered that ammunition ship to the Union. And he goes, this is just a gift for Uncle Abe. And not only did he do that, he fought the entire Civil War. He fought. And it's interesting because when Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, people don't really think about what he said. He said, enslaved Africans in the Confederate States are free. And he was very clear. This war is not about slavery. This war is about me trying to keep this country together. It had nothing to do with you. He was very clear on that. But then when he signed the Emancipation Proclamation, enslaved people were like, we'll fight, take us. They came by the thousands, and he still wouldn't let them fight until they started to lose. Then it was like, wait, were you talking about fighting? Did you say something about that? And they fought, and they fought. Well, you know what happened. They won. But all of this is happening. The Emancipation Proclamation is being signed. African Americans are fighting, and the enslaved Africans in Texas know nothing about it. Not a clue. And so think about those years and months of your children still being sold, of still being violated, of working from sunup to sundown, and not know that you didn't have to be. You won't even let your boss get away with taking away 1 day of your pay. Can you imagine you got your check and you're like, excuse me, I worked on Sunday. You won't even let that go. Imagine months upon months upon months of that. And then finally being told you're free. That's what Juneteenth is. June 19th. That's why we celebrate it. Because that's when finally the last enslaved African knew that the laws are on the books now. You don't have to be slaves anymore. Not only that, with all the blood you shed, with all the tears you cried, with all the money you've made this country, you are finally a citizen. Now, the thing about Juneteenth, yes, it's a cultural holiday. It's an American holiday. But think about how many personal Juneteenth we've got. How many times we have let outside stuff convince us we're not free to do one thing or the other. So today, as we celebrate Juneteenth for enslaved African Americans, as we celebrate it for all Americans, celebrate it for yourself. You're sitting here, so that tells me that you've got some Juneteenth days of your own. Where when everybody was saying, well, you can't do that because we've always done it this way. And you were like, happy Juneteenth to you. And so I want to thank you for listening to me today. And what I hope that you will take from my story is how we're all connected. And how the fact that we go, love lives here, that's the strength that got us through. And that's the strength that will continue to get us all through today. That hasn't changed. Love was there, and it's here now. And so I don't care what you look like. I don't care what you wear in a day, where you live. I want you to go, this is me. Let me hear you say it. This is me. I don't believe you. Come on, this is me. Are you enough? Yes. Are you? I don't know. Are you enough? Yes. And so when you walk with your back straight, your chest out. You go, this is me. Love lives here. Wherever I walk, that's where love is. And no matter what the outside looks like, I don't care what it is. If you did not have to pick cotton today, and your master didn't come to your house last night, and your children weren't sold away this morning, you're having a good day. Because they had to have a good day in those days, because they had to make it. So can you. So as this community grows, and I know that it is, because we're very lucky to have him. And when new people come through that door, and they come with whatever story they have, you put your arms around them and you say, love lives here, and you're going to be all right.
So you were invited to bring a piece of cloth with you today, and if you did not have the opportunity to bring a piece of cloth with you, we do have extra cloth here. We do have extra cloth here. So what we would like to do is we would like to create our own quilt for this community. And so you have your piece of cloth. We have some push pins there right next to Darlena, and so we'll bring those over here as well. We invite you to form lines down the center of the sanctuary here, and then come forward and pin your piece of cloth to this board here, and we will begin to make a collective quilt. Once everything has been pinned, then the intention is to take this along with another workshop that Josie is going to tell you about in a moment. We're going to take these pieces of cloth for the community and create a community quilt that reminds us of our direction, that shows us where to go, that reminds us of who we are, that speaks to each one of us individually and to us as a community collectively. A sign of welcome, a sign of love, a sign of freedom. So I invite you to form a line down the center here, and please come forward. And you can pin your cloth to the board itself. After you've pinned your cloth, if you would exit out the sides of the side, or return to your seats through the side aisles. Thank you. the beauty of this community. Take it in.